I think this may be a contender for Game of the Year for me. Hello everybody, my name is Ilya.
And my name is Tyler. Together we make up Kovray, a couple that loves to play board games.
And making music.
I've never made music in my life.
You sing to me every day.
That doesn't mean I've made music.
That's what music is.
Oh.
Your beautiful voice.
Yeah. Sure.
Well, today we are going to do
check it out.
Which is what?
Video where we show you various board games in hopes to figure out whether or not you'll enjoy it.
And today we're looking at Lacrimosa.
Look how beautiful this game is. Holy moly.
Beautiful.
Check it out.
This game is published by Devir Games, and it is designed by Gerard Ascensi and Ferran Renalias. It is about Mozart.
It is.
So the Lacrimosa is his unfinished Requiem. So his widow, Constance, has decided to look at all the patrons in his life and utilize them to help her finish his last song.
Bum, bum, bum.
So you'll be playing a patron, traveling and reliving the memories of Mozart and trying to get into his memoirs because you want to make history too.
Exactly. But before we get any further into it, let's get you a quick overview of how to play.
As always, you'll begin by setting up. You'll set up the map with the royal court tiles and city tiles. Prepare and shuffle the deck for the game, separating each period with a random bonus tile. Flipping the bonus tile for the first period and dealing out the cards at the top as shown. And finally, you'll prepare the composers. You'll choose 2 of the 4 composers to use for the game and lay out their composer tiles as shown. You'll shuffle the Constance cards and choose 1 at random, placing the Constance counters on the instruments shown on the card based on the player count. You'll then give each player a personal board and 1 game summary tile. Additionally, each player will get a shield, a starting deck with memory cards, as well as a starting opus card. Then they'll place their 7 Requiem markers of the color on the instrument spaces in the personal board, and their story markers and funds marker on 2 of each space. Each player will receive starting ducats based on turn order. They'll shuffle their starting memory deck, draw 4 cards, and now you're ready to play. Now each game of Lacrimosa is played over 5 game rounds or periods. In each of these periods, every player will take 4 turns playing 2 cards each turn. Now each period is broken into 4 different phases. Let's go over them. Number 1, the main phase. At the start of each round, all players simultaneously draw memory cards from their own deck until they have 4 cards in their hand. Except for the first turn in the game, the players will begin each round with 1 card that is left over from the previous one. Now the second step is the player turns. This is where the heart of the game will take place. When it's your turn, you must play 2 cards from your hand and slide them into your personal board. Now 1 card will be played on the top in the experiences section, and 1 card will be played on the bottom in the story section. Once the 2 cards have been played, you'll carry out the action in the experience section. Let's go over each of them. Documenting memories. This one will allow you to choose 1 memory card from the main board, pay the cost of ducats and story points, discard the card that you placed in your story section and replace it with the card you just purchased. You'll then refill the top row. The second action is commission an opus. You'll choose 1 opus card from the main board, pay the cost in ducats and Mozart's talent story points that is shown on the top of the card plus any additional shown in the space above. You'll then place the opus card in front of you. You'll gain the victory points indicated on the card and any additional victory points if any of the composer tiles you have on your personal board matches the type of opus you just commissioned. You'll slide the cards to the right and fill the empty spaces in the card row on the board. Now why do you need an opus? Well, the third action is perform or sell music. You'll choose an opus card that you have in front of you that you have not yet used this round, that's not rotated, and decide whether you wish to perform or sell the work. Now you'll pay the cost for your choice in Mozart's talent story points. If you've chosen perform, you earn the money indicated in the card and must turn the cards 90 degrees to indicate that you cannot perform it again this round. If you choose to sell it, you'll update your finance track, scoring shield according to the values on the card, then discard the card from the game. Now you'll earn additional victory points if any of the composer tiles you have on your personal board matches any type of opus you performed or sold. Now the fourth action is to travel. You'll decide what city or court you'd like to move the Mozart marker to. You can choose any destination as long as you pay the cost along the track. Once the journey marker has reached the destination, you must also pay the cost in journey story points that is shown on the destination tile. Right after that, you'll gain the rewards and are able to carry out the indicated action. Then you'll remove the tile from the board. If it's a royal court tile, you'll keep it in front of you. These tiles show a goal or a royal favor that, if achieved, will grant you victory points at the end of the game. If it's a city, once the reward's been granted, you'll simply leave the city tile to the side of the main board. Now the fifth and last action is the Requiem action. You'll choose an empty instrument space and a movement of a Requiem on the main board that you wish to commission. You'll remove the matching Requiem marker from your personal board and receive the award shown in its space. You'll place it on the movement of the Requiem on the empty instrument tile matching the composer you wish to hire. You must then pay the cost shown on the top composer tile using ducats, composition story points, and in some cases by updating your finance track. You'll then collect the reward on the composer tile and place it face down on your personal board in the space you removed your Requiem marker from. Keep in mind that if composer tile shows a reward on the back, you'll receive it when appropriate for the remainder of the game. At game end, you'll determine which of the composers made the greatest contribution to each movement, and the players will earn points according to who sponsored those instrument parts. And those are the actions. You'll keep playing until every player has taken 4 turns, placing 8 cards on the board, leaving them with 1 in their hand. At this point, it is the maintenance phase. First, you'll return the various story point tracks on your personal board to 0. Then you'll update them according to the icons shown in the card you played in the story section of your personal board. If you have a card that grants you victory points, you'll also receive those. You'll then see if any of the composer tiles you've already placed on the instrument tiles give you a story points reward. You receive it at this moment, advancing as many spaces on the indicated tracks as needed. You'll then receive finances depending on your position on the finance track. This can be money, moving along your story tracks, or victory points. You'll also check the period bonus. You'll check which action appears in the bonus tile and take the reward shown for each time that action's icon appears on your experience section of your personal board. And then you'll clean up, rotating any opus cards that were performed during this round back to the original, removing all memory cards from the experience and story sections, and shuffling your deck for the next round. The last phase of each period is the main board. You'll make sure all city and royal court tiles currently on the board are showing the side with the gilded frame. If they don't, you'll turn them over. After that, you'll fill any empty city and royal court spaces with tiles from the appropriate deck with gilded frames face down. You'll then prepare the deck. You'll remove the bonus tile for the period that just ended. The 4 cards located in the spaces to the right are discarded, and any cards from the deck that are on top of the bonus card for the next period are also discarded, if there's any. You'll place the bonus tile that's now on top of the deck in the bonus tile space section, slide all the cards down, and draw new cards until the top row has been filled. The first player marker passes, and then you'll keep playing. Now once you completed the 5th round of the game, after finishing your personal board step in the maintenance phase, you'll carry out the final count of victory points using these steps. You'll first check the royal court tiles that you've obtained. You'll check the conditions and score victory points for each set that you've managed to obtain. However, you can only use each opus and instrument part once throughout all the royal court tiles. Then you'll score the Requiem. There are 2 victory point values for each movement of the Requiem. Each Requiem marker you have on that movement will score one of those values. First, you'll determine which composer contributed the most instrument parts to that movement, adding up everyone's markers including the neutral one. Now the neutral markers count for majorities, but they don't award points to anybody. Now each of your Requiem markers that matches the composer who contributed the most will earn you the higher victory point value. Each of your markers that match the other composer awards you the lower victory point value. If there is a tie, both award the lower value. You'll do this for each of the movements, scoring victory points. Now last but certainly not least is you'll get 1 victory point for every 2 story points you have left, including the sum of the tracks and any counters you have left. And 1 victory point for 3 ducats you have left. Once you've added up the victory points, whoever has the most wins. Will you be the most successful patron? and get into the memoirs?
Well, now that we've given you a quick overview, let's jump right into our first section here with the Check It Out series, our comparables.
Comparables. Do you want to start?
Sure. My comparable for Lacrimosa is actually Lisboa. Trust me, it's not as heavy as Lisboa, but Lacrimosa, the way that they've set this game up, for those familiar with Lisboa, is you take actions based on how you play and what type of cards you play. In Lacrimosa, where you slide your cards and the symbols that are on the top versus the symbols that are on the bottom grant you access to certain actions. And I think these actions that happen in Lacrimosa can kind of overlap with what Lisboa is trying to do there, and there is a lot of like interaction that ends up happening on the board, and it's all play a card, like do an action kind of thing. And I think that's where the biggest connection for me is with Lisboa and Lacrimosa.
It's funny because that was the first one that came into my mind as well. Yeah. So I had to think of a different one, which is hard for me.
I made it difficult.
So and bear with me in this comparison, my comparison is Tapestry. Now the reason it is Tapestry is because Tapestry has 4 different tracks you can move on,
right,
and then they can influence and grow your game in various ways. You can really dedicate your game to one of the tracks potentially. And I feel like Lacrimosa is very similar in that fashion because you can spend a lot of time commissioning opuses and looking, or maybe traveling, or maybe just contributing to the Requiem. There's a lot, like you can really focus in on one of the elements and gain a lot of victory points from that. It's obviously nice to dabble in everything, which it is in Tapestry as well.
Yep.
But here you can really hone in on one of them and get majority of your victory points from one of the areas and one of the actions.
Yeah, that is true.
Is that a good comparison?
I suppose so.
Thank you.
All right, with those out of the way, let's talk about why somebody might want to check this one out.
Well. I think I'll start off with the complexity of it, but how smooth the mechanics really are. So I think there's a lot of games out there that are just complex, and I'll be blunt here, just to be complex. Like, I feel like there's not an added layer of why they need to be that complex. There's a lot of moving parts, and you're just like, why do we have to do all of this? In this game, it is a more complex game, but I feel like everything makes sense. The first time we played it, once we learned it, I think the times after, we barely reference the rulebook because it just makes sense of what you do. It's really easy to pick up. It's quite elegant in the way that the mechanics flow together. And if you make a guess of like, okay, it'll probably do this, most of the time you'll check the rulebook and that's what it does. So it's I think it's intuitive, which I really like.
Yeah, I think what you're trying to say is that like the actions you take in this game are fairly straightforward. By making it a play 2 cards on your turn, 1 take the top action, 2 save for later and use the bottom. Like that is all you really do. That's the main thing you do on your turn. And based on how you play them, what you play them, you've got to be able to proceed with those actions. But there's complexity in how you choose to play them, when you choose to use them, the time that you like choose to take a certain action, collecting whatever you want, choosing the right upgrades. Like the complexity comes from the decisions you have to make after you've played those cards. And I think that mechanically makes it very smooth, but adds a lot of complexity to the decision making in the game.
Yeah, when you were saying that, I just pictured like a decision tree, and that's why I like it because like it's not like you're gonna be there's so many things you can do. Your first choice is look at your 4 cards. You may only have 2 actions in there that you can do. Choose one, and then based on those actions, you have more decisions to make. So it layers the decision making, which makes it like it just flows, and I really like that.
It's really built around the strategy, which I guess would be the next point I would say somebody might want to check this out. Ilya kind of mentioned in his comparable is that there's like a variety of ways to take this and build your strategy. You do probably want to dip your toes into every single one of the possible actions that you can take, but that doesn't mean you can't focus on certain things. If you want to be a traveler, then make sure you're traveling, but also grab those goals because those goals are going to be the reason that help you generate a lot of points. But by traveling and collecting those goals, you might have to dabble in collecting opus cards. Like there's it kind of just comes back to the first point, is it just kind of intuitively makes sense. When you do something, you should probably keep on doing something or shift and go for something else. So because there's a lot of ways to play the game and this variety of strategy, you can come into this game with an open mind and kind of just like let the board guide you on what you want to do. And I think that's a lot of fun sometimes, because you get to build a strategy like on the fly, and also pay attention to what the other players are doing, because that'll help you win the game.
I think the other thing I'll add too is the variation in the gameplay as well. So you can come into the game and you can have a strategy like, this is what I'm going to do, but unfortunately that's not what you're going to do the next time around, because there's so many layers of that variability. There's four composers that you can choose from to play, and there's recommended beginner ones, but then there's other ones as well, and how you layer those two will influence your game significantly. The goals, the tiles are always different, the cards are always different. You're never going to see a similar game, especially like drawing your cards even too. You can always plan, but that adaptability is the nature of the game. You always want to see how can I maximize my contributions as a patron here. And
resources are slim in this game.
They are.
So even just like talking about how the cards show up in the purchase space, like that is huge, because you could be 1 coin short of getting the card that you would have gotten last time if you were playing a certain strategy. So you've got to be patient, got to be aware, and got to be willing to just go with the flow sometimes.
That you are. So what about some of the reasons why you should not check this game out? Why it might not be for you?
Why wouldn't I want to check this game out? I think because of the complexity, like to turn it on its head, because we mentioned it and why you should check it out. The complexity of this game can kind of get a little bit overwhelming sometimes, especially knowing that, again, your main thing on your turn is to choose which 2 cards you're going to play and where you're going to play them. You have to be pretty aware of when you should be doing these things, and I think because when you play them, you have to play through your whole action, plan through these things, that this decision tree gets larger than anticipated sometimes, and it can get exactly that, overwhelming. So I think the complexity can also be a hindrance to check this game out.
Yeah, and if you're not into complex games, if you don't need that in your life, big rulebooks, then this game may not be for you. I think to build onto that as well, what I'll say is the competition aspect of it.
Right.
So in complexity, you can build your strategy. You can say, hey, I want to get this Opus card. In order to do that, I need to get coins. So you start building out a pathway to get that Opus card. And you're almost there, and then Tyler takes it. And then all of a sudden, what do? You've done all these actions to culminate to this moment, and now you feel like a little bit of a loss.
Timing is very key in this game.
And I think that applies to every aspect of the game. When you're traveling, tiles will be taken. And maybe the goal that you were planning to take is no longer there. Maybe when filling in the Requiem, there's aspects in it that you really want to contribute to, or you want to get the most points. All of a sudden, it's taken. You have no more spaces for that instrument.
Exactly.
Unfortunate. So I think there's a lot of layers like that, and that can, if you're not into that competition, if you get very antagonized by when other opponents take your actions and take your spaces, then maybe this one isn't for you either.
I would add to that is that cards offer you more than just actions and Opus card and like victory points. So you definitely have to be aware of that, because somebody might not be taking that card for the same reason that you would be taking it. They might just be taking it to complete a set for part of their goals. Maybe they're a high performing strategy, so they want to take that card because it's exactly what they need to do to perform. So there are a lot of different reasons you would take some of the cards, and then on top of that, like your traveling point, they could you have to adjust to the goals that are coming up, because they don't get replaced. They get flipped over, so they're better rewards, but if you don't have the right money to travel anywhere, well, bye.
Yeah. I think last thing I'll mention too is the with a more complex and a heavier game. There's a lot of setup in this game, especially at a lower than a full player count, because you have to basically make the decks, which does take some time because there's 10 different piles and you're trying to shuffle and make sure everything is evenly distributed and cards are omitted from some of them. So there's layers in that in the setup and the cleanup. So if you are not, I don't want to set anything up, I want something on my table that plays immediately, this game may not be for you as well.
Yeah, it's just part of getting into a more complex game.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so what are our general thoughts on this one?
Well, I think something we haven't talked about is the music connection to this. It's all centered around music, the theme of it. The theme is a little bit tough to pick up on initially because you're essentially traveling. You're not traveling back in time, but you're reliving your life and supporting Mozart, and you're telling the stories to Constance to essentially help her see get all the elements in his life to support writing the memoirs.
Right.
So I think that element of it is basically like you're storytelling through stories, but you're actually reliving it on the board is a little bit hard to grasp, but it's a very cool theme in my opinion.
A very cool theme. It was hard for me to see how the game mechanics and everything you were doing related to the theme. But yeah, I do really love the theme, and that also goes hand in hand with the art. I think it's an absolutely stunning game.
Beautiful.
Like, you can just tell by the cover, it just gets better from here kind of thing.
Well, I think there's layers to it as well. Like they've maximized every aspect of this game in the production to make it as beautiful. Like the books, the backs of them have beautiful covers. They're like little notebooks that you open up.
Your player markers.
The player marker. The rule book, which I actually love, and I'm gonna celebrate this. The rule book has completely unique art to the game.
Yeah, that's so
and
cool.
It's something that you don't see because usually, like, how often do we see just the cover onto the rule book, and it's just the same thing.
Yeah.
So I love.
There's nothing wrong with that. But they've taken the time to really.
It's elevated in every aspect that it can when it comes to art, and absolutely stunning. And the other thing I'll mention too is that there is a solo mode.
Yes, that sounds very different.
It is. So I've learned it and I set it up, but I didn't play it because I wanted you to play it with me for the first time. But generally, there's only one composer. And it's a very clever solo mode, which I'm really I'm excited to play it. It's something that I'm interested in. And I'm not the biggest solo gamer.
Yes.
But having said all of that, I think this may be a contender for Game of the Year for me.
I need to play it. That's a big statement.
It's a big statement. Watch out, Wayfarers.
Yeah.
Wayfarers has some competition.
Play it at a higher player count to understand it. Because the one thing I will say that I didn't enjoy about it at 2 players is the replacing of the traveling. So traveling costs money, and like I said before, as it's limited resources, it's hard to travel from one side of the board to the other side of the board, and you can kind of count on other people using the travel when you're playing. At least this is my thought processes. You can count on other people to use the travel in other, like when you're playing with a higher player count. So then you don't have to worry about chucking like 8 coins out the window to get to the spot that you need to so you can get that goal. Or using it 2 turns to kind of slowly get yourself there to maximize whatever that is that you're trying to do. It does suck when one of the goals is on the other side and there's no way to get to it except for making a lot of money.
No, that's fair.
So there's that, and then I wish they were replaceable. But that's it. I think it is a really good game other than that, because I've never really focused on those goals anyways. I think I've been able to work in different strategies. Maybe if I tried that strategy, I'd find out more. But I love the bold statement of saying Game of the Year.
It is. I think
I love it.
I was sitting and thinking about it the other day, and there's not a lot in this game that I don't like. I think it fits everything that I love to do, and even like it's a game that I would not say no to. I would be happy to set it up. I'd be happy to play it. I am really excited to play at a higher player count. I think that will influence my decision significantly. But I would be shocked if it's not in my top 10 list.
This is definitely a contender for my top 10. I'll say that for sure. I don't know if it will reach number 1, but I'm biased.
Why are you biased?
Maybe we'll find out when we do the top 10 list. Anyways, this is a fantastic game. The biggest thing for me, and we said it in why you should check it out, is the simple actions leading to a complex strategy game that honestly makes it really, really grindy, but really, really enjoyable.
Well, for our question of the day today is, when you were younger or currently, do you play a musical instrument? And what do you play?
Or instruments, because this fella over here knows how to play.
I did trumpet in middle school and high school, and then in high school I also did saxophone. So I did trumpet for jazz band and saxophone in regular band.
Fancy.
And then I've learned piano was my first instrument, I think. But I don't know.
Was it your
like
first?
It was. My parents got it to
Oh,
me
I didn't know
for
that.
New Year, which is like the Christmas of Russia, when I was like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
But I can read music not the best on piano, but I like chords and that kind of stuff. Like
I
fun.
do the music reading.
You do.
Yeah.
And I play guitar. Guitar is
Oh
fun
yeah,
too.
guitar. Yeah. So I only play piano, but when I was young, well, I don't really play it anymore.
You should.
Yeah, I should. But
You can be the next
they
Mozart.
do like conservatories. This is my little node to Mozart, but they do like conservatory grades, and I think the highest was 12, but I got to grade 9, and that was pretty good. It's like, yeah, you just go in and sit in a room with 1 or 2 other people, and they would examine you, and then they'd put like sheets on the piano, and you'd have to like sight read the whole thing, do it properly with timing. It was a lot of fun. It was really stressful.
Do you think you'll pick it up again?
I think I just lost interest, and now like
What grade do you think
my
you're in
hands
now?
are not as good as they used to be. Oh, I don't even know. I could probably maybe pass like 2 or 3, but
Guess we'll have to sign you back up.
no, I don't need to go back to that.
Well, let us know what your experience, or if there's an instrument that you wanted to learn, let us know.
The fiddle. That would be a lot of fun.
Well,
If you liked this video, hit that thumbs up, press that subscribe button if you're new here. We'd love to have you along our journey, and make sure you answer that question of the day in the comments down below, letting us know.
or just tell us anything about music.
That too.
Are
We
you
love to
gonna
have the conversations.
Are you gonna sing to me now after this video?
As if.
Music.
That is the instrument I did not say I had. So,
Beautiful music.
until next time though, this is us checking out.
Bye.